Welcome! This is the first lesson of the third course. Are you ready? Here we are going to continue with the grammar part, and of course we are going to talk about different subjects and themes and the vocabulary that you might need when talking about those things. Before we start, I would like to use or take the first lesson as an opportunity to go through the Vergangenheit one last time. Vergangenheit was the past tense, remember? So let's see what we learned in the second course about the past tense. In the Vergangenheit, in German, you have two ways of saying something in the past tense. You either choose the verb to have, haben, plus the special form of the verb that include ge. Ich habe gehabt. For example, as you can see, I have watched or I watched in English. In German, translated, it would be Ich habe geschaut. So the main verb is schauen, to watch, and therefore you use haben, or in other words, you say ich habe because the pronoun is I, and the verb haben with I is habe. Ich habe geschaut. And geschaut is the special form of the verb schauen. And those are the forms that you have to learn by heart. Another example would be I wrote. Ich habe geschrieben. Ich habe from the verb haben, and geschrieben, the special form of the verb schreiben. The main thing that you have to keep in mind that haben is usually used with verbs that don't include movements. Like to write something, to do something, to see something. Those are like 70% of all verbs in German. There are some exceptions, however, that you also have to keep in mind. But the main idea that haben comes with verbs where you don't move. And of course, those verbs have to be done in the past. An example would be, yesterday we played football. Gestern haben wir Fußball gespielt. Gestern haben wir Fußball gespielt. Aha, you remember? The special form of the verbs should be the last word in the sentence. In this case, we have gespielt, that comes from the verb spielen. And gespielt would be the end of the sentence. An example would be the verb reden, which means to talk. Let's see. So the special form would be geredet. Geredet. As long as you know that, the only thing that you have to do now is change the verb haben based on the pronoun. So you say, ich habe geredet. Du hast geredet. You talked. SES hat geredet. Wir haben geredet. Ihr habt geredet. And sie haben geredet. That was the first form of the Vergangenheit. The second part is almost the same, but instead of haben, you use the verb sein or the verb to be. And again, each verb has a special form that usually has ge in it. As an example, I jumped. To jump is springen, and the special form that should also be learned by heart is gesprungen. The pronoun is I, therefore you say ich bin. And the entire sentence would be ich bin gesprungen. I jumped. Ich bin gesprungen. If you can remember, if you want to say something like I was, you have two ways. You could either say ich bin gewesen, and gewesen is the special form of the verb sein. Ich bin gewesen, or you use the shorter form ich war. Ich war. Both versions are correct, however, people usually tend to use ich war more often. Another example would be I went. Gehen. And the special form is gegangen. The pronoun is I, therefore you say ich bin gegangen. Ich bin gegangen. If you compare the verbs with each other, you could see that you use to be or sein with verbs that you actually move while you are doing them. To jump, to go, to swim, and so on. So the differences between haben and sein are only whether you move while doing this verb or not. Again, there are some exceptions, but this is the main rule. A similar sentence would be, yesterday we went home. Gestern sind wir nach Hause gegangen. Gestern sind wir nach Hause gegangen. And again, gegangen would be at the end of the sentence. So here, both haben and sein have the same rule. The special form of the verb would always be at the end of the sentence. Let's go through the verb gehen one more time, which means to go. As you know, gegangen is the special form that never changes. Gegangen. And because it's a verb where you move, you use sein, based on the pronoun, of course. So you say, ich bin gegangen. Du bist gegangen. Sie, es ist gegangen. Wir sind gegangen. Ihr seid gegangen. Sie sind gegangen. Do you remember those exercises? You have 5 sentences, and for each sentence, you have 2 possible answers. Read the sentence, try to translate it, and then choose the correct answer. We are going to go through the sentences and explain why this or that are the correct answers in a moment. So let's see. The first sentence is Wo habt ihr gegessen? Wo habt ihr gegessen? Where did you eat? Gegessen comes from the verb essen, and essen is known as a verb where you don't move. Therefore, you use haben. And because the pronoun is ihr, the correct form of the verb haben would be habt. Wo habt ihr gegessen? The second sentence is Ich habe meinen Cousin gestern gesehen. Yesterday, I saw my cousin. Gesehen comes from sehen, and sehen takes the verb haben. The pronoun is ich, therefore ich habe. You see, in a way, it's like a mind game. Like you have to go through it step by step. And with time, you get actually really good at it that you don't have to think about it. The third sentence, for example, is Willst du mit mir spielen? Do you want to play with me? Here, you don't need a verb in the past tense. Therefore, you simply have to say spielen. And as you know, with verbs such as to want, to need, to have to, and so on, to must, for example, all those verbs would be changed by the pronoun, and the second verb, for example, in this case, spielen, stays in the infinitive. Therefore, spielen should be as it is, unchangeable, because wollen, or to want in this case, is the verb that gets changed. Können wir morgen ins Kino gehen? Again, This is the same case as the sentence before. Can we go tomorrow to the cinema? Können is can. And it's also a verb that when used, the second verb stays in the infinitive. Just like wollen in the sentence before. Therefore, you don't need the Vergangenheitsform of the verb gehen. You simply have to add the verb as it is in the infinitive. And finally, wie viel Uhr hast du gekocht? At what time did you cook? Now, based on the meaning of the sentence, you could say gegangen. However, you have hast du. And hast du is an evidence that tells you that the verb should be one of those verbs where you don't move in them. And we all know that gegangen is a verb that takes sein and not haben. Therefore, gekocht is the only correct answer. Let's try it again. Read the sentences and choose the correct answer. So let's see. Ich lebe in London seit 7 Jahren. In English, this sentence means I have lived in London for 7 years. Vor 7 Jahren would be 7 years ago. And the sentence in this case won't make sense. Therefore, the correct answer is only seit. The second sentence, gestern habe ich Deutsch gelernt. Yesterday, I learned German. Studiert is to study, which means to study something at the university, and not to learn something. Therefore, gelernt is the correct form. Wann hast du Österreich besucht? When did you visit Austria? Gegangen would also be correct, however, you have hast du. And hast du, as we know, doesn't go with the verb gehen. But besucht does use haben. Therefore, besucht is the correct answer. Wann magst du ins Restaurant gehen? When do you want or when would you like to go to the restaurant? Essen won't make much sense because we have ins, and ins Restaurant means to the restaurant and not in the restaurant. Here you have to be a bit careful. And finally, wir haben in der Schule Pizza gegessen. We ate pizza at school. Gegessen comes from the verb essen. However, gesessen comes from the verb sitzen, to sit. And it doesn't make sense if you say, yesterday we sat pizza on school, right? Therefore, gegessen is the correct answer. Let's do one final exercise. Was haben Sie gestern gemacht? What did you do yesterday? Try to describe your day in simple sentences. A possible answer would be, gestern bin ich mit meinem Hund ausgegangen. Ich bin in den Park in der Nähe von meinem Haus gegangen und wir sind zusammen gelaufen. Let's go through it step by step. Gestern bin ich mit meinem Hund ausgegangen. Yesterday, I went out with my dog. Ausgegangen comes from the verb ausgehen, which means to go out. And, of course, it's a verb where you use sein in the Vergangenheit. Therefore, you put bin. Ich bin in den Park in der Nähe von meinem Haus gegangen. I went to the park near my home. In der Nähe means near. Von meinem Haus, near my home or near my house. If you would translate this bit, it would be literally, I went to the park in the nearby area from my house. Therefore, you have to put von meinem Haus. And finally, und wir sind zusammen gelaufen. And we ran together. Zusammen means together, and gelaufen comes from the verb laufen, which, by the way, also takes sein when in the Vergangenheit. Gratuliere! You've just finished your first lesson in the third course. I hope you're still remembering what Vergangenheit is, and we are going to continue from now on with new topics. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!